Welcome to the show, The Antithesis, aka Education Made Visible. Come with me. Shh, class is in session. Segment that we call Peeling the Onion. Take a look.
So today's story comes to us from Washington. With lawmakers still at an impasse over increasing the debt ceiling, a special team of 40 8th grade civics teachers were airdropped into Washington earlier today in a last-ditch effort to teach congressional leaders how the government's legislative process works. I love that too.
I love it.
So we started them off with the basics, like the difference between a senator and a representative, and then we moved on to more complex concepts like what a resolution is. Bosman Middle School social studies teacher Heidi Rossmiller told reporters as all 535 members of Congress copied down the definition of checks and balances from a whiteboard in the House chamber. It's been a bit of an uphill battle since most of them seem to have no real sense of how or why a bill is passed, and Senator Harry Reid had to come up to me during the break and say, "Ms. Rossmiller, what happens if Congress can't reach a compromise?" But hopefully it will start to sink in soon. At press time, and I love this one, an unruly House Speaker, John Boehner, had noisily stormed out of the lecture on bipartisan cooperation, claiming it was just too hard. So what do y'all think about that?
I think it's so needed. I mean, finally, something for civics teachers to do.
Something for Congress to do. How about that?
Yes, Congress needs the civics lesson sometimes. You need to get back. We need to get back to the basics.
Sometimes I don't think they know what the hell they're doing. I don't think they know what the hell they're doing. So if we need to drop some teachers in there,
it seems like just the emotion and the personal investment, gets in the way. We got to get back to the way that our government was designed.
Exactly,
and it works.
I agree.
If you
but
work
is that
it.
True. I mean, wasn't it always pretty contentious?
Well,
yes.
It seems like it. I think now it's just so prevalent with us having so many bipartisan issues. You have to either be on one end or the other.
It does seem like it's more contentious now.
Do you think it's because we have a black president?
Ooh.
You think that's why? No, I'm just asking. Do you think it's because we have a black president? They weren't acting this crazy when Bush was in office. I'm just saying. Bush had a lot of the same issues, and you did not have people questioning the president's integrity or storming out or yelling at him during, House sessions. I think now people think that it's just okay to disrespect the president, and I don't see. I have not seen people do that.
Is that about the president, or is that the culture that has been born recently? Because there's this culture on television, on radio, on cable, where people just say whatever they want to say without any sort of respect or decorum or manners or civility, or just do it. Is that part of the culture, or is that, I think it's hard.
I think it's more the culture, because you don't see it in other countries. That is not allowed. With freedom of speech here, it is allowed, and I don't think it's disrespect.
Who was the lady who had her finger up in the president's face? Remember that?
Yeah.
And she was, wagging her finger. What are you? Why would you do that? This is the president of the United States. You don't get your finger up my face, you won't have it anymore. What? That's crazy. But I've never seen that happen to anybody else, but she did it to him.
I'm not the president, but if you put your finger in my face,
I'm going to help you remove it.
President's integrity has always been questioned in the past. Look at our past presidents. Look at Clinton. Look at so many others. Their integrity has always been questioned. On the line. Yes. So I don't think it's.
So you think it's just Americans? We're the ones who always question our leaders.
I think so.
Interesting.
Also media. It seems like that in that realm, things have gotten more contentious and more dramatic.
Right.
And I think that came with the rise of 24/7 news. It's like they've got to cover something.
I agree.
They've got to cover something.
That's a good point.
I agree completely.
And so this stuff started to be born. But going back to the issue of government and their capacities and understandings and abilities, there are a number of instances around the country where we're seeing government take over other components of the government. So, for example, in Detroit, the governor recently tried to make a move in taking over the city of Detroit. I'm sorry, in Michigan. The governor of Michigan tried to take over the city of Detroit. Sort of forced the council to make a vote that would give the governor some control, some pretty significant control, and the option of not taking that vote is to lose total control.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's, my question is, what took them so long? I think Detroit has been very ineffective since we've lost a lot of the large automotive, the industry that built the city and sustained the city, and they have been fiscally mismanaging their funds. Was it Kwame Kilpatrick? Kwame Kilpatrick, the mayor who was completely corrupt, was arrested, lying, bribery, attempted murder charges for different things. I mean, I think that this city has been careening out of control for a very long time.
So, I mean, so what do you guys think? Like, do you think it's justified?
It depends what do they do with it once they have control? You know, are they really going to support it, you know, to rehab the city, or, you know, what are they going to do with that control?
What's the plan? Is there a plan in place? Do we just go in and take over, or is there a plan? And is that going to be a better plan than what was in place?
Well, I'm sure there is some
better than what's going on right now.
You think?
Absolutely.
Well, okay. Well, the governor has already taken over the school district of Detroit and placed an emergency manager that makes all the decisions. So the superintendent has no say-so. The Board of Education, the elected board. So is that a civil rights issue? Because now the governor is, the governor's office is ignoring the people that were elected to make those decisions.
But they weren't making decisions that were in the best interest of the students and their stakeholders. So if you're not doing your job, then I think somebody else does need to come in and show you how to do your job and be more effective.
Or maybe there should be like more of a collaboration. You know, maybe it should be more of a collaborative. I don't know, like if they have total control, if they're really not listening to the superintendent at all, or the Board of Ed.
The emergency manager makes all the decisions.
Mm-hmm. Well, that does seem drastic to go from having autonomy than to having the state government come in and call the shots.
But if they were not doing what they were supposed to be doing, and in turn were affecting, you know, children's lives and children's future, yes, I think that's
yes.
Well, the other point,
and usually there's a process.
The other point that I'd like to point out about these situations is that it's often I think every situation I can name is in African-American communities. And so on the one hand, where the system is not working for the kids, I think we have like the worst black-on-black crime that we've ever seen. Because like all the leaders are African-American, and the larger percent of the students are African-American, and it's just not working for them. It's a terrible system. Like the Detroit public schools are like terrible, or have been terrible. And then we also saw that in Wilma Hutchinson, which is in Dallas, a suburb of Dallas. That school was actually closed and merged into DISD.
But I think, okay, so are we going to look at this being African-American schools? Are we looking at these are schools in urban communities of poor or students of low socioeconomic status?
Well, I think the important piece, though, is that these communities, the reason I think it's important that they're African American is because in these situations, these are places where African Americans have lived for many, many years. So they have a long history of living in these areas. I mean, really long, like before segregation, I mean, before integrations. And then some of them even go back as far as like, you know, right after slavery ended. So it has a long history of an African American presence. And the only way that they could maintain some level of autonomy was to be on these school boards.
Right, right.
So this was their way of being able to control their communities. And so when that control is taken away, that destabilizes the power source, the economic source. But is it justified because people are being hurt?
Do you know of communities similar communities that are functioning well? You know, that are predominantly African Americans who have been there for generations. I mean, I don't know.
Can't think of one.
But do you think they exist?
Of course they exist.
No.
Of course they exist.
Mount Vernon, I think, and New York is one.
Of course they exist. The issue, again, is being effective. And a lot of times, a lot of these communities, people are taking the power and using it for themselves. bringing in their cousins and big
Exactly.
mama and uncles.
Exactly.
And giving
It's how these people move into the positions.
Exactly.
It's very
Exactly.
political.
Right.
And do they belong in these positions?
Exactly.
Are they equipped?
Are
they
they
qualified?
Are they
Right.
qualified?
Right.
Right. And it's the
And then-
children
and then-
who are being taken advantage of.
How do they become qualified? You know, if they want to, you know,
Because you
retain
big
some
mama's
autonomy.
neighbor.
I mean, I'm sorry, like legitimately. Like, you know, I mean, if the states were coming in to legitimately help them become qualified,
Right.
that's a different.
And
you know,
that's a
different
very
thing.
good point, because there's another story in North Forest ISD in Houston, Texas, where the state threatened to come in and close the school district down at the end of the school year of 2012 and merge the district into Houston ISD. Now, the thing about that is that Houston ISD already doesn't serve that population well.
Right.
And so why are you going to merge it into a district where the kids who are similar to these kids are not being served by Houston? Why would you do that?
Merge them into a bigger system.
Well, I think because they're trying to give them resources to have an education that they're not receiving presently in the district that they're being served in or they live in.
It's not happening right now in North Forest ISD. They're not being served, so that's the other choice that they have.
Right.
But it's not a reasonable choice.
It's a solution.
But it's not a reasonable solution. I don't
Yeah,
even
it's
think
So what
that
do you
is
think
a
the solution should
Yeah.
be?
Well, I think that we have to think
Some
of
solution.
something completely different, something that
Out
we've
the
never
box,
seen
yes,
before.
out of the
I mean,
box.
you know, something like that looks at charter schools and combines it with
There's
the
some charter schools
traditional
over there.
with the traditional district or something. Like, just think out of the box, because
Like,
to
how can we
merge
serve
them
them?
into a system that already isn't serving kids like
Right.
them well, that's not helping.
But education is not out of the box. We like to do things that are cyclical. We like to do things that are safe.
Right, but we are trying to make it. If it's not out of the box, we at least want to shine a light on it.
And they've actually won. They're not being closed down at this point, right? They've won an appeal.
They want an
One
appeal.
more.
So there's there must be some
The
evidence.
current superintendent
of
is actually
improvement.
someone who is not part of that community, and who's really doing things the right way, and has been able to win an appeal.
Excellent.
And so, thank you for joining us. This conversation will continue, hopefully not just with us, but with you as well. Class dismissed.
Good night.